Now, I would like to call this section our intermediate part of the course. So this is where we're going to see how to use HTML forms to be able to submit data to the server. Let me make use of the comments. Intermediate section of the course. Okay, now how do we create a form and how do forms actually work in HTML? Well, there's a tag that we're going to see right now. It's called form, the form tag. So the form tag can take some inputs inside, but since the purpose of a form is to submit data to the server, so there's an attribute that you gave to the form tag called action. So this is where the file that processes the data that you sent to the server resides. So well, we're not talking about backend development right now, but if you're using technology, a programming language such as PHP, inside the action attribute, you could point or uh, you could point to a file, a PHP file that you have somewhere um, in your folder, for instance. This could be process.php, for instance. But we're not doing much of PHP. Maybe you're gonna get to some PHP or some backend technologies in the future, but we're not talking about that right now. So this is just to show you that the action attribute is needed on the form, and a file to process data that you send to the server needs to be present in your form and in the action attribute. But let me just leave it blank. And so if you leave it blank, it means that the data that you submit will be processed in the current file. So we're not processing any data, we're just going to see how the form tag works and how you can put the inputs right here that will hold the data. Now, let me make use of the label tag. So, for instance, label, I can say first name, and then below right here, I'm going to have the input for the first name. Input type will be text, and name. Yeah, I'm gonna explain this name attribute very soon. So let me say name. This is gonna be first name, and then let me create another label. Say last name. Okay. Let me create another input for the last name. Type will be text, of course, and the name will be last name. And below right here, let me have an input, and this time this input will be submit. The type will be submit. Name will be submit. Okay, let me save. Go back to the browser. Refresh, and ta-da! Do I have a form right here? Well, let me put some line break just to have it so that we can see this well. Yeah, I have a form. Let me put some more breaks here. Yeah, you can see that I have a form. It's a very a simple form. So it has an input for the first name, an input for the last name, and a submit button. Well, this label right here, this label tag, what does it do and why do we need it? Okay, so once I set label right here, I have to specify what this label is for. Like, what is this label representing? In this case, I want this label to represent the input for the first name. Then I would give this first name an ID, for instance, and say the ID will be first name. And inside my label, I would say this label is for the first name, and I would call my ID first name. And when I save, I go back to the browser, refresh. So whenever for instance, I click on this label first name, which is coming from here, so you can see that my cursor appears inside the input for the first name. So because this label is connected to this input, and I could do the same for the last name, just a matter of giving it an ID and say last name, and my label could say this label is for the last name, and the same happens when I click it on the last name, and then my cursor appears inside my last name input. Now I don't need anything for the submit button, but yeah, you can see. So like, this is my form. I could type in my name, let's say Joe, my last name Doe. Well, once I hit submit, now this form will be submitted, and as you can see inside, I have a parameter called first name right here, which is Joe, and the last name Doe. Submit button is submit. So because I did not specify any file, an outside file, a path to file that would process this form, so it is being submitted to the current form, and that's why I have these parameters right here as first name and last name. Now, what is this name attribute? Well, when dealing with forms, actually, this name attribute is very important because this name represents the name of the input.